My name is Margaret Fields. I'm 75 years old, and I've lived in the same small town for most of my life. I've watched it change in ways I never could have imagined. More stores, more cars, fewer neighbors. I've seen the world evolve, and yet some things never change. Like the love a mother feels for her child, no matter what they do. But that love was tested one hot July afternoon, and the pain of that moment still lingers, like a scar I can't quite forget. It happened out of nowhere. I was in the kitchen as usual, making my famous meatloaf, something I'd been cooking since my son Daniel was a boy. He was 35 now, a grown man with children of his own. He had never been an easy child, but I loved him deeply, even when he made my life difficult. That afternoon, he came into the house like a storm. I could see the anger in his eyes before he even spoke. "Mom, I'm done with you," he shouted, slamming the door behind him. His voice had a tone I had never heard before, angry, almost full of hate. I turned to face him, holding the wooden spoon in my hand. "Daniel, what on earth is wrong with you? Why are you so angry?" He stood there, shaking with rage, his hands clenched into fists. He was always a little temperamental, but this was different. I had never seen him like this. "I'm tired of your interference, your constant need to control everything in my life." His words were sharp, like knives, cutting through the air between us. I took a step forward, trying to calm him. "Daniel, I'm not trying to control you. I just want to help." But before I could finish my sentence, he raised his hand and slapped me across the face. The sound of the slap echoed in my ears as I stumbled back, my hand instinctively going to my cheek. I couldn't believe what had just happened. My son, the boy I had raised with all my love, had just slapped me. For a moment I stood there, frozen. The pain on my cheek was nothing compared to the heartbreak I felt deep in my chest. This wasn't just a slap. This was betrayal. "Get out of my life, Mom," he yelled, his voice shaking with fury. "I never want to see you again." And then he walked out of the house, slamming the door behind him, leaving me standing there in the middle of my kitchen, with tears streaming down my face. He never came back. I haven't seen Daniel in 5 years. And the worst part, I don't even know where he is. The silence between us has been deafening. What happened that day? What made my son, the one I loved so much, walk away from me and disappear? The years I spent raising Daniel were the best years of my life. Sure, there were hard times. Money was tight and there were always more bills than I could pay, but I did the best I could. It wasn't much, but I gave him everything I had. Daniel was my only child, and I loved him fiercely, like a lioness protecting her cub. I remember when he was little. His bright eyes, his messy brown hair, the way he would run around the yard chasing fireflies. He was always full of energy, always asking questions, always trying to figure things out. And I tried to be the best mother I could. I worked long hours at the local diner to make sure we had food on the table. I did the laundry, I made sure his school projects were finished on time, and I made sure to be there when he needed me. But somewhere along the way, things started to change. It started slowly, like a crack in the foundation of a house. Something small, barely noticeable at first, but over time it grew larger and larger. When Daniel was a teenager, things became harder. I had always tried to be understanding, but I didn't know how to handle his mood swings, his defiance, the way he would shut me out. Every time I tried to talk to him to understand what was going on in his mind, he pushed me away. He started staying out late, hanging out with the wrong crowd, and I couldn't stop him. I'd often sit by the window at night, waiting for him to come home, my heart heavy with worry. I tried to talk to him, tried to ask if he was okay, if he needed help. But he would brush me off, tell me I didn't understand, that I was just an old woman stuck in her ways. I knew deep down that he wasn't happy, but I didn't know how to fix it. I was his mother, and I loved him, but I couldn't change the person he was becoming. I watched helplessly as he drifted further and further away from me. Then came the day he left for good. He was 23, and he had met a woman I didn't trust. Her name was Lila, and from the moment I met her, I could tell she wasn't good for him. She was selfish, manipulative, and used Daniel's vulnerabilities to her advantage. I could see the way she controlled him, how she made him question everything about himself, how she pushed him further away from his family, from me. I tried to warn him, to tell him that he deserved better, but he didn't want to hear it. He was in love, and love, no matter how destructive, blinded him. The day Daniel packed his things and left, I tried to hold on. I begged him to stay, to think about what he was doing. But he wouldn't listen. His anger flared, and before I knew it, he was gone. That was the last time I saw him. I spent years wondering what went wrong. What had I done? What could I have done differently? Was it something I said? Was it because I wasn't a good enough mother? The years passed, and the pain of his absence never went away. I tried to move on, tried to keep busy, but the empty space he left in my heart remained. I couldn't fill it with anything. Nothing ever felt the same. Then, 5 years ago, I got that call. I thought it was a mistake. I thought I was hearing things. But when I picked up the phone, it was Daniel's voice. He sounded older, angrier. And when he told me what he had done, when he told me how he had slapped me and disappeared for 5 years, I was stunned. I couldn't understand it. I still can't. What happened to my son? The boy who had once been full of life, full of questions and love and laughter. How did he become someone who could slap his own mother and leave without a trace? The truth is, I may never know the answer to that. But I do know one thing. I have to find him. I sat in my living room, staring at the phone in my hand, my fingers hovering over the keys. I had spent the past 5 years trying to move forward, trying to accept that Daniel was gone from my life. But now, with that brief phone call, everything had changed. The silence between us had been broken, but I still had no answers. Why did he slap me? Why did he disappear? I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just sit here waiting for him to come to me, especially after all these years. I had to take matters into my own hands. I picked up the phone again and dialed the number for Lila, the woman who had taken my son away from me. I didn't know what I expected to hear, but I needed answers. I needed to know what had happened, how she had influenced him, how she had convinced him that walking away from his family was the right thing to do. The phone rang for what felt like an eternity before someone picked up. It was Lila's voice, cold and distant. "Hello," she answered, her tone uninviting. "Lila, it's Margaret Fields," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I'm Daniel's mother. I need to speak with him. Do you know where he is?" There was a long pause, a thick silence that stretched between us. "He doesn't want to talk to you," she said flatly. And honestly, I don't blame him. Her words stung, but I tried not to let her see the effect they had on me. "I don't care about your opinions, Lila," I said, my voice sharp now. "I just need to know where he is. Please just tell me. He's my son." Another pause. I could hear her shifting on the other end of the line. "You don't understand, Margaret. Daniel doesn't want to be found. He's made a choice, and it's not one you can change." Her voice was tinged with something I couldn't quite place. Resentment, perhaps, or maybe guilt. "Where is he, Lila?" I asked again, my voice pleading now. "I don't know, Margaret. He's gone. He cut ties with everyone, his family, his friends. He's disappeared into the world, and he doesn't want anything to do with the past. And you know what? Maybe it's for the best." Her words were like a punch to the gut. "Please," I whispered, my heart sinking. "Please tell me where he is. I just want to make things right." But there was no reply. Lila had already hung up. I stared at the phone in disbelief. After all these years, I had come so close to the answers I had been searching for. But now I was left with nothing. No explanation, no closure. Just a wall, a barrier that seemed even higher than it had been before. I was ready to give up. I wanted to shut the door on this chapter of my life, to stop searching, to let Daniel go. But I couldn't. I knew deep down that I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I didn't at least try. So I started searching. I went to his old friends, people I hadn't seen in years. I went to the places he used to go, the old park, the corner store where he worked for a while. I asked around, hoping for a sign, hoping that anyone had seen him. But no one had. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. But I couldn't stop. I couldn't give up on him. I reached out to a private investigator, someone who could help me track down Daniel, who could uncover the answers I needed. The investigator was kind but firm, telling me that it wouldn't be easy, that people had a way of hiding, of disappearing. But he promised to try. And so the search continued. In the meantime, I reflected on the years I had spent waiting for Daniel to come back. I had told myself that he would return, that he just needed time, that he would realize his mistake. But the years had turned into something else, something I couldn't quite define. They had turned into a long, painful absence that left me with more questions than answers. I had been waiting for Daniel, but I had also been waiting for the truth. It had been 3 weeks since I hired the private investigator, and despite his assurances, there had been no progress. No new leads, no phone calls, no sign of Daniel. It felt as though I was chasing a ghost. Every day, I woke up with a sense of dread, knowing that my son, the man I had raised, was out there somewhere, and yet so far out of reach. The weight of the silence was starting to crush me, pressing in from all sides. I spent my mornings reading the letters he had sent me years ago, back when he was still a boy, full of hope and life. He wrote about his dreams, his plans, his life. In the letters, I could see the boy I had known, the son I had poured my heart into. But that boy felt like a stranger now, someone lost in time, someone I could never reach again. The investigator finally called. I had been waiting for the sound of his voice, hoping for any news, even if it wasn't what I wanted to hear. "Margaret," he said, his voice steady but careful. "I've got something for you. I'm not sure how you'll take it, but it's important." I felt a rush of fear and anticipation. "What is it?" "There's a place," he continued. "A town about 2 hours from here. It's a small place off the beaten path, but I've traced Daniel there. It's not much, but it's something. He's been living there under a different name." A different name. My heart sank. Daniel had completely cut ties, vanished, and even assumed a new identity. I tried to gather my thoughts, but all I could feel was the overwhelming ache of betrayal. "How long has he been there?" I asked, my voice trembling. "About 2 years now. I couldn't find much more than that, but I'll send you the details. If you want to go, it's up to you." The phone call ended, but I didn't hang up immediately. I just sat there, staring at the receiver in my hand, trying to process what I had just learned. Daniel had erased himself. Completely. He didn't just leave, he became someone else. It felt like a slap, like he had chosen to erase not just his past but his connection to me, to everything we had shared. But I wasn't going to stop now. This was it. This was my chance to find him, to understand why he had left and why he had decided to bury himself in another life. I didn't wait. The next day, I drove to the small town, the place where Daniel had chosen to disappear. The road was long, winding through farmland and fields, and as I got closer, my heart beat faster. The thought of seeing my son again after so many years was both thrilling and terrifying. I didn't know what I would say. I didn't know if he would even want to see me. The town was small, too small, and as I drove through it, it felt as though nothing had changed in years. The streets were quiet, and the houses all seemed to look the same, like they had been frozen in time. I pulled into the small parking lot of a diner, the only business in town that looked open, and stepped out of my car. Inside, the smell of coffee and grease filled the air. I walked up to the counter, trying to steady my shaking hands, and spoke to the waitress. "I'm looking for someone. His name's Daniel Fields. He lived here for a while, under a different name. Do you know where he is?" The waitress looked at me for a long moment, her eyes scanning my face. Then she nodded slowly. "You must be his mother," she said, her voice quiet. "I haven't seen him in a while. He moved out of here a few months ago. He was staying in a little house on Maple Street, but I don't think anyone's seen him since he left." My heart sank. "Do you know where he went?" I asked, my voice breaking. She shook her head. "No, I don't. He didn't say. But if you're really looking for him, You should talk to old Mr. Harris. He lives next door to where Daniel used to stay. He might know more. I thanked the waitress and stepped back outside, the weight of the conversation settling in. Daniel had left without a trace. And now I was here, chasing a shadow of the son I had once known. I walked to Mr. Harris's house, the old man's figure visible through the window, hunched over a chair. I knocked on the door, and after a long moment, he answered. His face wrinkled with age but his eyes sharp. "I'm looking for my son, Daniel Fields," I said, trying to steady my voice. "I was told you might know where he went." Mr. Harris studied me for a long while before stepping aside and letting me in. "I knew Daniel," he said slowly, "but he was a strange one even back then. He didn't like people asking too many questions. When he left, he didn't say much. But I did hear him talking to a man. Some business deal, he said. He was going somewhere. I don't know where." "A business deal," I repeated, my heart racing. "What kind of deal? Who was the man?" "I don't know, lady. Just some guy. Never seen him again." I felt as though the walls were closing in. Each answer I received only seemed to open more questions. What was Daniel involved in? Why had he left? The puzzle pieces were scattered, and I was still too far from putting them together. I left Mr. Harris's house with more questions than answers. The town was still and quiet, as though it were holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. But what had happened to Daniel? What had driven him to disappear so completely, to cut ties not only with me but with everyone he knew? The information I'd gotten from Mr. Harris about a business deal, a mysterious man, seemed like a dead end. It wasn't enough to piece together any part of my son's life, but it was a clue, and I wasn't about to let it go. I walked back to my car, my mind racing. It was late afternoon now, the sun sinking low in the sky, casting long shadows across the empty streets. I drove to Maple Street, where Daniel had lived. The house was small, tucked between two others, a modest little building that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. The windows were closed, the front yard overgrown with weeds. I parked across the street, staring at the place where Daniel had lived. Everything about it felt abandoned, forgotten, just like he had been. I sat there for a long time, thinking about the things I should have done differently. The warnings I ignored, the distance I let grow between us. I had been too focused on being the perfect mother, trying to do everything right, while Daniel was slipping away, lost in his own pain. I sighed and reached for my phone, scrolling through my contacts. I hesitated for a moment before calling the private investigator again. "Margaret." His voice came through the line, sharp but kind. "I've been going over the details. Found something. A man named Sam Holden who was involved with your son. I'll send you his address. He's the one Daniel was meeting with." My heart raced. Sam Holden. A name I'd never heard before, yet it felt important, like a key to unlocking everything. "Thank you," I said quickly, my voice tight. "I'll take it from here." I hung up the phone and immediately pulled up the address. It wasn't far, just a few streets away, down by the old part of town. I didn't know what I expected to find there, but I knew I had to go. If Daniel was still involved with this man, I had to understand why. I drove to the address, my hands gripping the wheel tighter as I neared the rundown part of town. The houses were older here, more dilapidated. Broken fences, cracked sidewalks. I pulled up in front of a small house with a chain-link fence. The front porch sagged, and the yard was cluttered with debris. This didn't look like the kind of place Daniel would choose to live. I stepped out of the car and walked slowly up to the door, my heart pounding. I had no idea what I was walking into, no idea who Sam Holden was or what his connection to Daniel really was. But I had come this far. There was no turning back now. I knocked on the door, my hand shaking slightly. After a long pause, the door creaked open, and a man stood there, looking at me with weary eyes. He was older than I'd expected, maybe in his early 60s, with unkempt hair and a rough, weathered face. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice gruff. "I'm looking for my son," I said, my voice steady despite the fear rising in my chest. "His name is Daniel Fields." You might know him as someone who worked with you." The man's eyes narrowed. He glanced over his shoulder, then back at me, his expression guarded. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, but his voice betrayed him. There was something in the way he looked at me, something in his hesitation. I knew he was lying. "I know about the business deal," I said, taking a step closer. "I know you were the one Daniel was working with before he disappeared. I'm not leaving until you tell me where he is." The man sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, lady, I don't know where your son is. He came here, yeah, a couple times. He needed something. But he's gone now, and he doesn't want to be found. You should just leave it alone." My heart dropped. "What do you mean? What did he need from you?" He shook his head, backing away from the door. "I told you, lady, I don't know. He was getting involved with things he shouldn't have, and it wasn't my business. But whatever it was, it scared him. I haven't seen him since he left." "You're lying," I shouted, feeling the desperation rise inside me. "What did you do to him? Where is my son?" The man looked at me for a long moment, his face hardening. "I'm not going to help you. Get out of here." Before I could say another word, the door slammed shut in my face. I stood there, frozen for a moment, my mind spinning with everything I had just heard. Daniel had gotten involved in something dangerous, something he had been hiding from me. And now he was gone. Completely. I had come so close to finding him, and yet I was still no closer to the truth. I sat in my car for a long time after leaving Sam Holden's house, the weight of his words pressing on my chest. Daniel had been involved with something dangerous, something he had been hiding from me, and it was clear that Sam knew more than he was willing to admit. I felt helpless, like I was chasing a shadow, always just one step behind. But I wasn't about to give up. Not now. The investigator had given me Sam's address, and I had gone to him hoping for answers, but instead I was left with more questions than ever. What kind of business had Daniel gotten himself involved in? Why had he left, and why had he cut me out completely? I drove aimlessly through the streets of the town, trying to clear my head, but all I could think about was Daniel. He was my son, the boy I raised. How had he gotten so far away from me? What had gone wrong? I parked by the old diner, the one Daniel used to work at when he was younger. The neon sign flickered in the dusk, casting a soft glow over the empty parking lot. It felt like the kind of place where old memories lingered, a place that was frozen in time. Maybe it was foolish, but I thought if I just walked in there, maybe someone would remember him. Maybe someone could point me in the right direction. The bell above the door jingled as I stepped inside. The smell of coffee and grease filled the air, and for a moment, it felt like time had stopped. The same waitress I'd seen 100 times over the years, Donna, stood behind the counter, her tired eyes looking up as I walked in. "Margaret," she said, offering a small smile. "It's been a while. You here for a cup of coffee?" I shook my head, feeling the weight of the moment. "No. Actually, I'm looking for my son. His name's Daniel Fields. You remember him, don't you?" Donna paused, her hand frozen mid-motion as she set a mug down. "Daniel. Yeah, I remember him. He used to work here, back when he was still around. Do you know where he is?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. "I've been looking for him. He left 5 years ago, and I don't know where he went. I just need to find him." Donna's expression shifted. She glanced over her shoulder, as though she were making sure no one was listening. Then in a quiet voice she said, "I don't know where he went, but I do know that he started hanging out with a bad crowd toward the end. People you don't want to know, Margaret." My stomach turned. Bad crowd. What kind of people? She lowered her voice even more. The kind of people who don't let go of their own. Daniel was getting involved in things that weren't legal. I don't know all the details, but I know he was trying to get out. That's why he left, because he was scared. And whoever he was running from, they weren't the kind of people you want to cross. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My son, the boy I raised, was running from something dangerous. Something that had him so terrified he couldn't even turn to me for help. I felt a surge of panic rise in my chest, but I forced it down. I had to stay focused. Who was he working with? I asked, my voice tight. Donna shook her head. I don't know the name. But I do know he was meeting with someone in the back of the diner late at night. Always the same person. He stopped working here when they started getting involved in whatever it was they were doing. I just know it was bad. People like that don't disappear quietly. And Daniel? Well, he was never the same after that. I felt the ground shift beneath me, as though the world I thought I understood was crumbling away. Daniel had been in over his head, and he had been too proud or too scared to ask for help. I thanked Donna for the information, though it barely felt like enough. There was no name, no concrete leads, just vague references to the danger Daniel had been running from. I left the diner, my mind spinning. This wasn't just about a son who had walked away from his mother. This was about a man who had become trapped in a world of violence and fear, a world that had taken him far from me and had kept him there for years. I was close. I could feel it. But I still didn't know what to do next. The investigator had given me the name Sam Holden, and now Donna had confirmed my worst fears. Daniel had been involved in something he couldn't escape. But how do you find someone who is trying so hard to disappear? The days after my visit to the diner felt like a blur. I was closer than ever to understanding what had happened to Daniel, but the more I uncovered, the more the reality of his situation hit me. He hadn't just disappeared for no reason. He had been pulled into something dark, something I couldn't yet fully comprehend. I sat at the kitchen table, my hands clenched tightly around the coffee mug, the warmth of the drink doing little to ease the chill running through me. I had spent the last few days trying to piece together the fragments of information I'd gathered. The strange man Daniel had been meeting at the diner, the bad crowd Donna had spoken of, and now, a few chilling thoughts of my own. What kind of people could drive my son to run and hide from the world? And why hadn't he come to me for help? I knew one thing for certain now. Daniel wasn't just hiding from his past. He was hiding from a threat. And this threat wasn't just some random encounter. It was serious, dangerous. The investigator had done what he could, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized I needed to take matters into my own hands. The detective could search for him, dig up records, track leads, but the only person who truly knew the deep, emotional pain Daniel had been carrying all these years was me. I had to find him. I knew that the person Daniel had been meeting in the back of the diner, the man he had been involved with, held the key to everything. Sam Holden was the link. He wasn't just a man Daniel had crossed paths with once or twice. He was the one who had dragged my son into whatever world he had been running from. With that in mind, I made my decision. I was going to confront Sam Holden. I didn't care what it took or how dangerous it was. Daniel had gone off the grid, had erased every trace of himself, but Sam Holden knew where my son was. He knew more than he was letting on, and I was going to make sure he told me the truth. I drove back to the address the investigator had given me. I knew the man would be expecting me, but I didn't care. This wasn't a game anymore. This was my son's life at stake. As I pulled up to the small, run-down house where Sam Holden lived, I noticed a few cars parked outside. This wasn't the place where normal people lived. This was a house that belonged to someone involved in something illegal. The darkened windows, the grime on the porch, the tall weeds creeping up from the front yard. It all felt wrong. I stepped out of the car, my heart pounding in my chest. Every step I took toward the door felt like a step into unknown danger, but I couldn't turn back. Had to do this. I knocked sharply on the door, trying to steady my breath. Moments later, the door creaked open, and there he was, Sam Holden. His face was rough, his eyes cold and calculating, but there was something in the way he looked at me that made my stomach churn. "What do you want?" Sam's voice was low and gravelly. "I'm here to talk about my son," I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my throat. "Daniel Fields. You know him. You've been involved with him. And now he's gone. You're the last person who saw him, and I want answers." For a brief moment Sam said nothing. His eyes flicked from my face to the driveway and then back again, as though considering his options. I don't know what you think I can help you with, lady, he said, his tone defensive. Daniel made his choice. I ain't got time for any more questions. You're lying, I shot back. You're the one who's been controlling him. He trusted you and you let him down. You dragged him into something dark, and now he's disappeared. I want to know where he is. I'm not leaving until you tell me the truth. Sam's eyes narrowed, his hand gripping the doorframe. Listen, you don't know anything about this. You don't know what he got himself involved in. And you don't want to. I know enough, I said, my voice hard. I know that my son is lost, and I'm not going to stop until I find him. Now, tell me what you know, or I'll go to the police. There was a tense silence between us, the air thick with the unsaid words hanging heavy in the space between us. For a long moment, Sam just stared at me, his jaw clenched tight. Then finally he spoke. You want to know where your son is? Fine. But you're not going to like it, he said, his voice low and almost regretful. I leaned in, my heart racing. Tell me, Sam. He took a deep breath, then let it out slowly. Daniel got involved with some dangerous people. People who don't leave loose ends. He was trying to get out, but when you're in deep like that, there's no way out. Not unless you're willing to give everything up. I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I had to stay strong. What do you mean by give everything up? Sam's face tightened. I mean, he made a deal. Bad one. And when he tried to walk away, they came after him. That's why he ran. That's why he disappeared. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Who came after him? Who are these people? Sam shook his head, his expression hardening. I can't help you, lady. They're dangerous. If Daniel was smart, he's gone as far away as possible by now. And if he's not? He trailed off, leaving the sentence unfinished. I felt like the floor had dropped out from beneath me. The fear in Sam's voice, the warning in his eyes. It was clear. My son wasn't just hiding from his past. He was hiding from people who wouldn't hesitate to hurt him. I turned and walked away, my mind spinning with the implications of what I had just learned. I was closer than ever to understanding what happened to Daniel, but the truth was darker and more dangerous than I could have ever imagined. I barely slept that night. The weight of what Sam had told me kept me awake, swirling in my mind like a storm. Daniel had gotten involved with dangerous people, people who didn't care about family, people who only cared about control and fear. The idea that my son, the boy I had raised, had fallen into this world, made deals with these kinds of people, felt like a betrayal that cut deeper than any physical wound. But the worst part, Daniel hadn't just run from me. He had run from them. And if he hadn't gotten out in time, I couldn't finish the thought. I couldn't let myself go there. I needed to focus. I needed to find him before it was too late. The next morning I gathered myself and headed straight to the private investigator. I couldn't waste any more time. Sam's cryptic warning had been clear. Daniel was being hunted and time was running out. The investigator's office was small, tucked away in a quiet corner of town. When I walked in, he was sitting behind his desk, flipping through a file. The moment he saw me, he stood up, a look of concern crossing his face. Margaret, he said, his voice soft. I've been tracking some more leads. There's a chance we can still find him. But it's going to be tough. I don't care how tough it is, I said, sitting down in the chair across from him. Tell me what you know. I'm not leaving until I get answers. The investigator opened the file and began to show me the information he had gathered. He had tracked Sam Holden's movements, connected some dots, and uncovered a few shady figures who had been involved in the same business Daniel had been running with. The people Sam had alluded to. Dangerous men who were tangled up in organized crime. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach as I looked at the names and photos in front of me. These weren't just petty criminals. These were people who had power, influence, and no hesitation when it came to destroying anyone who got in their way. The person Daniel was working with, the investigator continued. His name is Rick Mason. He runs a network of illegal operations, drug trafficking, money laundering, and more. He's ruthless, and he doesn't take kindly to people who try to leave. I don't know what your son got himself mixed up in, but I have a feeling it's far deeper than you realize. The room felt smaller. The walls seemed to close in around me. My son had been tangled up in something far beyond his control. He hadn't just been running from fear. He had been running from a machine that could crush him if he didn't stay hidden. Do you know where he is now? I asked, barely able to breathe. The investigator shook his head. No, but we're working on it. We're close. If we can find Rick Mason, we'll find Daniel. It's only a matter of time. But time was the one thing I didn't have. I knew that. Sam's warning echoed in my mind. If he's not smart, he's already gone. I had to act fast. I thanked the investigator and left, my mind racing. I couldn't wait for the slow crawl of the investigation to unfold. I had to take matters into my own hands. I called a few old contacts I had, people who had connections in the criminal world, people who owed me favors. I needed to find out where Rick Mason was operating, where his men were, where they had been seen last. I couldn't afford to wait. Hours later I got a tip. Rick Mason's operation was centered around a warehouse just outside of town. An old, abandoned building with no windows, the kind of place where people could disappear without a trace. I knew I had to go there, but I also knew it would be dangerous. My heart pounded as I thought about Daniel, my son, trapped in a world he hadn't chosen, fighting to survive. I couldn't let him down again. I drove to the warehouse, my hands gripping the steering wheel as the sun began to set. The world outside was fading, the streets growing darker, and all I could think about was finding Daniel. When I arrived at the warehouse, the area was eerily quiet. No lights, no sounds, just the hum of the wind and the distant rumble of the highway. I parked a few blocks away and crept closer, my heart in my throat. The last thing I wanted was to get caught, but I wasn't going to back down now. I moved through the shadows, my eyes scanning the perimeter. And that's when I saw it, a figure in the distance, standing near the back of the warehouse. I didn't know who it was, but I could feel my pulse quicken. Was it one of Rick's men? Was it Daniel? I took a deep breath and approached slowly, every step calculated, my mind racing with possibilities. But as I got closer I froze. The figure turned, and I saw a familiar face. It was Daniel. He was standing there watching me, his face pale and drawn. His eyes filled with a mix of surprise and fear. "Mom," he whispered, stepping back. "What are you doing here?" Tears sprang to my eyes as I rushed toward him, but before I could reach him, he held up his hand. "No, Mom. You need to go. You shouldn't be here. It's not safe." I stopped, my chest tightening. "Daniel, I've been looking for you for years. You're not alone anymore. Please just come home. Let me help you." His eyes flickered with something, guilt, pain, but then he turned away, his back to me. "I can't," he said, his voice cracking. "I'm in too deep. They'll come after you if you stay. You need to leave. You need to let me go." I watched as he took a step back, his silhouette disappearing into the darkness. My heart shattered. I couldn't let him go again. Not like this. But the truth was, I couldn't make him stay. Not when he was this broken. I stood in the darkness, watching the place where my son had disappeared, my heart shattering with each step he took away from me. The cold night air was thick with regret, and the sound of Daniel's footsteps fading into the shadows felt like a death knell to everything I had hoped for. "Daniel," called out, my voice cracking. "Please don't walk away from me. Please don't do this." But he didn't turn around. He kept walking, moving further away, vanishing into the night. I felt a weight press down on me, the knowledge that I had finally found him, only to lose him again, sinking deep into my chest. But even as the tears welled up, even as the pain threatened to consume me, I knew one thing. I couldn't give up. Not now. Not after all the years of searching, of hoping. I took a deep breath, my body trembling, but I didn't move. I couldn't let him go again. I couldn't let the darkness take him, not when there was still a chance. With shaky hands, I pulled out my phone and called the investigator again, desperation in my voice. "I found him," I said, my words coming in a rush. "He's here. But he's not staying. He's walking away. Please, I need help. We need to get him out of here." The investigator's voice on the other end of the line was steady, but I could hear the concern. "Margaret, you need to stay calm. We've got the team ready. We'll get to him. Just hold on, okay?" "I can't just wait," I said, the panic rising in my chest. "I can't lose him again." I hung up, my heart pounding as I looked around. The warehouse loomed in front of me, the place that had held so many dark secrets. But Daniel was already gone, and I didn't know if I could find him in time. And then I heard it. The soft crunch of footsteps on gravel. I turned, my heart in my throat, and saw a figure emerge from the darkness. It wasn't Daniel. It was someone else. Someone who had been waiting. I stepped back instinctively, my breath catching in my throat. A man, tall and broad-shouldered, approached slowly. His eyes were hard, unyielding. "You should have stayed away," he said in a low, menacing tone. I swallowed hard, recognizing the voice. It was one of them. One of the men Daniel had been hiding from. "I don't know who you are," I said, my voice shaky, but I stood my ground. "But if you think I'm going to just walk away from my son, you're wrong." He chuckled darkly, the sound echoing in the still night air. "You really don't know who you're dealing with, do you?" He took a step closer. "Daniel owes us. He's in deep. He tried to get out, but there's no way out of this life. You should have left well enough alone, lady." I stepped back, my mind racing. The danger was closing in. My son was trapped in a world I couldn't reach, and I had walked right into it. But something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let him get swallowed by this world. Not without a fight. "Where is he?" I demanded, my voice stronger now. "Where is my son?" The man stopped in his tracks, studying me for a moment. "You're not going to find him. And even if you do, it won't change anything. He made his choice and so did you. Now, you'll have to live with the consequences." He turned, walking back toward the shadows, leaving me standing there, my heart pounding in my chest. But as I watched him disappear, I realized something. I wasn't going to let him control me. I wasn't going to let anyone decide my fate or Daniel's. I turned back to the street, my mind racing. I had no idea where Daniel was or if he was safe. But I had come this far, and I wasn't backing down now. I wasn't going to give up on him. I had one final choice to make. The days following the encounter with the man outside the warehouse felt like an eternity. The world around me moved in slow motion, and yet my mind was racing faster than ever. I had come so far, uncovered so much, but I was no closer to understanding why Daniel had walked away, why he had vanished into a world so dangerous, so far beyond my reach. I had a choice to make. I could walk away, accept that I had done all I could, and move on with my life. I could let go of the hope that had fueled me for years, the hope that Daniel would return, that I would find him again and hold him in my arms. It would be easier, I thought, less painful. But in my heart, I knew that wasn't the right choice. Or I could risk everything. My safety, my peace of mind, and maybe even my life, to go after him, to drag him out of the darkness, even if he didn't want to come. I sat alone in my car, staring at the street in front of me. The same street I had driven down countless times, but now it felt foreign. The city felt foreign. Everything I knew felt like it was slipping through my fingers. My son was lost, and I didn't know if I could find him in time. But I had to try. I couldn't let him go again. Not like this. Not after everything. I made the decision. I wasn't going to stop. I would do whatever it took. I called the investigator again, this time with a clear purpose. "I need you to help me find Daniel. I need everything you have on him, every lead, every connection. We have to find him before it's too late." The investigator was quiet for a moment before replying. "Margaret, this is dangerous. You don't know what you're getting into. These people, they don't care who you are. They'll do anything to protect their business." "I know what I'm risking," I said firmly. But I'm not walking away from him. Not now. Not after everything I've already lost. You're strong, he said quietly. I'll help you. But be careful. I'll send everything I have to you. Stay safe, Margaret. I hung up and took a deep breath. This was it. There was no going back. I went straight to the warehouse, the place where everything had begun. The cold, dark building stood before me like a silent witness to the years of pain and regret that had led me here. The door was ajar, just enough for me to slip inside without being noticed. I moved quickly, my heart hammering in my chest, as I scanned the interior for any sign of Daniel. The place was deserted, but something felt different. The air was thick with tension, like a storm was brewing just beyond the horizon. I moved cautiously, my eyes searching every corner, every shadow. And that's when I heard it, a faint noise coming from the back of the building. I moved toward it, my footsteps careful but quick. As I rounded the corner, I froze. There he was, Daniel. He stood there, his back to me, as though he were waiting for something or someone. His shoulders were slumped, his face tired and drawn, but when he turned to face me, his eyes were full of surprise, fear, and something else I couldn't quite place. "Mom," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I stepped forward, my heart racing. "Daniel, I found you." He shook his head, stepping back as if afraid I would come too close. "You shouldn't be here. You don't know what you're dealing with. They'll kill you if they find out." "I don't care," I said, my voice trembling. "I'm not leaving you, Daniel. I've searched for you for 5 years. I'm not walking away now. Please let me help you. We'll figure this out together." He looked at me for a long time, his eyes filled with guilt and regret. "I don't deserve your help, Mom. I've hurt you. I've ruined everything. Listen to me," I said, taking a step closer. "You don't have to face this alone. You never have. I'm your mother. And no matter what you've done, no matter where you've been, I will always be here for you." He stood there for a long moment, his eyes clouded with conflicting emotions. But then, slowly, he nodded. "Okay, Mom. Babe. I'll go with you. But we have to move fast. They're coming for me. And if they find you, they'll hurt you." "I don't care," I said, my voice steady with a strength I didn't know I had. "We'll get out of here. Together. And we'll figure this out." We moved quickly, silently, back through the warehouse. As we reached the exit, I felt the weight of what we were about to face, of what I had already risked. But it didn't matter. Not anymore. Daniel was with me. That's all that mattered. We stepped outside into the night, the cold air hitting my face like a slap. But I didn't feel the cold. I felt the warmth of my son beside me, the promise that no matter what happened, we would face it together.